these huge migration. Um, so I don't know if you saw the news in like New York City, for example. They have tent cities, like they have a whole stadium that's like full of tens of thousands of
Mm.
migrants. They're hotels, and then they started shipping them into the suburbs. And then just recently, this weekend, there was this massive rainstorm, and it flooded the area where the migrants are. And so they're putting the migrants into new areas, and one of them right now is a Jewish neighborhood in Brooklyn where they put like temporarily 2,000 migrants. But you assume like, okay, it's bad for urban Jews. So like if London had such a thing that like God forbid if like 100,000 Gazans come to London, and they put like 10,000 of them in Golders Green and Stamford Hill, it's going to temporarily be bad for the Jews, but eventually they're going to move through Golders Green, and like the continuity of Golders Green as a Jewish neighborhood will continue, and they're going to move into your neighborhood.
Oh, thanks.
And I mean, but that's what you see happening here in the U.S. And like under Obama, like Ilhan Omar from Minnesota, the Somalians. So maybe they originally moved to New York, and they were temporarily in a Jewish neighborhood, but the continuity of the Jewish neighborhood remained the same because Jews are relatively prepared for multiculturalism, and then they started moving.
Because Jews are ethnocentric, and so they will
Here,
fight to
multiple
maintain that.
reasons,
Yeah,
but so that's the
they have
main
their
thing.
strong ties, and they know who each of them are. And I do remember that I told you I had like a half Jewish friend, and his dad was always on him. You have to marry a Jewish girl. You have to marry a Jewish girl. It was like a real problem for him. And when his dad found out that he was like dating a non-Jewish girl, like he went insane with him and all this kind of stuff. We don't have that kind of thing, and yeah, I agree that's to our detriment.
And even if like Claire here or something like that, so like it's like even if you team up with Claire against Doooovid, like at the end of the day, it's still kind of a win for Doooovid. Like even if like the whole purpose of your teaming up with Claire
Holy
is to
shit!
bash Doooovid, it's still basically a W for Doooovid. Just the fact that you teamed up with Claire.
The kosher sandwich, fucking wow!
I mean,
Holy
God
shit!
forbid. And then like
What? Assuming that's true, I don't quite see why though.
He's saying if we take if we have to resort to teaming up with other minorities, then we've lost because basically we're doing. I'm not saying this just for the hate speech laws. He's saying that we're doing what the Jews wanted for us in the beginning. Basically, we're playing into the game of just becoming
the frame games,
yeah,
you've
we're
been
one of the
relegated to
minorities.
solvency, minority tactics, and
It's
and
just group dynamics, isn't it? I mean, they talk about three people, you know, the relationship between a couple will change the moment a third person arrives, and then it'll change when a fourth person arrives, etc. It's just a numbers game, really.
the only
Well, I
thing
don't think
we need is the
you'll see
Kevin
it,
Michael
Claire.
Grace strategy. Like the biggest fear is the Kevin Michael Grace strategy, which is basically just you don't belong here. I'm sticking with that. Like I don't have a problem with you.
Mm-hmm.
My problem is that you're here, and I'm going to stick with that till like either I die or you're not here any longer. So if it's Kevin Michael Grace, it looks like he didn't win, but like he basically stuck to that strategy, just like ignore the minorities and you pretend like I said um like Elliot, talking about like what white people need to do is like be more nepotistic, and it's mentioned like these are all minority strategies. So like once you start employing minority strategies, you've already lost because like now you're a minority, and so like this
But
old
nepotism is for people who have families. That's why. That's how it
nepotism is a
happens, isn't it?
minority strategy.
Yeah, but I mean, white people don't even have families to be nepotistic with.
But you can't use a minority strategy as a majority.
Well, I mean, ultimately, it's whether you win and what you regard as winning. So I mean, okay, it's like the three Abrahamic religions.
The Kevin Michael Grace are old school alt-right. The victory is when Doooovid and Claire no longer reside in the West. That's the only victory. There's nothing that Doooovid or Claire could do to give a victory to the alt-right besides for packing bags and leaving. So from Claire's perspective, there's no she can't change her opinion. She can't moderate. She can't behave in a different way. She just has to pack up and go home.
Yeah,
it's what people keep telling me about my stream, to be honest. People say this about my stream.
Again, so okay, well, we've won. Now, no one's even asking Claire to pack up and go home anymore. They've just accepted that she's not going to pack up and go home, and even hundreds of thousands of people like Claire are going to be marching in the streets week after week.
Yeah, because the ruling classes don't care. So we have to ask the next question: why don't they care?
Because whatever the battle they lost.
Yeah, because they are a matriarchy.
You could whatever.
They're not having enough people to do stuff. That they have a labor
shortage. It doesn't matter to you why they lost.
Well, it matters to them. Do they want to know why they lost? Why they are in such a position that their own government hates them?
It's like salt on the wound that Doooovid and Claire are going to sit here and lecture them on why they lost.
Well, don't they want to know, or don't they care? I mean, I guess the anti-Semites will say, "Oh, it's a Jewish conspiracy," right? I mean, that's kind of what David.
Well, don't put words in David's mouth. He was careful not to make the allegations himself. He just allowed Doooovid to explain that part of a minoritarian strategy is to encourage other minorities and the growth of minorities, and so Jews as a very adept minority at playing this game. It's in their interest. It's in their interest to further multiculturalism.
Okay, so Jews are being so clever in inviting all these Gazans who want to murder them into their Western country. Have they got a hole in their heads?
Well, that hasn't happened yet, actually. That hasn't happened yet.
Well, I mean, that was what Doooovid was saying. Imagine 100,000 Gazans coming to Finchley.
Yeah, but they're once they get to the West, they're not going to focus on the Jews. They're going to focus on their own self-benefit in the West. So they might, when there's war in Israel, they might protest. Even if they protest, they almost always, make we don't hate the Jews. It's just what Israel's doing. And once the war's over, then it's okay, now they could just get ahead in the West. So even if 100,000 Gazans come, at the point, okay, they might cause a little bit of a headache for Jews in London, but once the war's over, they're going to move to Stephen's neighborhood.
Yeah. So you're saying the Jews won't care, basically?
The point is to ask. It's for white people, in the West, to ask, why is their government doing this? I mean, any ideas, Stephen? Why does your government hate you? Why
I don't know. I don't know what the answer is to this. I don't know why it's happening.
Is it a Jewish conspiracy? Is it God?
There's a difference between doing something out of spite. I mean, God forbid that's the claim that Israel makes against Hamas. That they're just bad humans. They don't even care about their own self-benefit. They just want to inflict pain. And saying no, I don't think that anybody, you could interpret it that nobody is nefarious. Everybody's just acting in their own best interest. And whites are losing out. So the Jews, the Muslims, the blacks, the coalition of oppressed minorities, there might be a little bit of feeling and sentiment of spite, but relatively no one's acting out of spite. They're acting out of their own self-interest.
Yes. So the question comes up again: why do Western governments hate white men?
They don't.
Really?
Well, I'm saying the governments, the elites, are still acting out of their own self-interest. Because they're not necessarily
Look, I think our elites just believe that they can maintain, like, they can still. There's going to be enough white people for them to breed with. You know, the ones who actually care about it. They'll thrive in minority status. They live in their gated communities. They don't really see the problems of diversity. It doesn't really affect them. They're fucking rich. They're living the life. At the end of the day, it doesn't
they're not
concern
doing it out
them.
of spite. They're doing it out of their own self-interest.
Or just indifference, I suppose. Indifference.
Yeah,
I
and they
mean,
probably have
maybe
they
you
probably
prefer
have
indifference.
like an attitude to us that we're cattle anyway, and who cares? Who
Well,
cares if
and
you know
the
the fact
using
that
the
the fact that
indifference
we're
of the
not
female voter,
elites.
right? They're using the indifference of the female voter and the female voter to just,
Well, I'm saying, God forbid,
use for
if in 10 years
unmarriageable
from now,
men.
if in 10 years from now, Stephen's neighborhood is 30%, minorities, and there's thousands of Gazans living there, or whatever switch, like, it wasn't necessarily anyone did it out of spite. It was natural forces, all people acting in their self-interest. And you say, okay, well, you're the people who were just living their life in your area were, when you say, like, if it's inevitable, like it's kind of like that famous clip of the Jacob, you are stealing my house, and he's like, well, if I don't steal it, someone else will. And so it's that attitude probably happening. You remember that famous clip, right?
No, but I mean, don't you see
Steve, you remember
that?
that famous clip in Jerusalem
Yeah,
with the
yeah.
Arab woman? It's like, Jacob, you were
With that
stealing my house.
Israeli settler, yeah.
Yeah, but saying that's really the same sentiment that's happening with your neighborhood also. Meaning saying, like, if we don't bring immigrants to replace you, someone else will. So
Well,
if
who
the white
will?
elites in England right now, they're saying, well, if I do this, at least I'll get the benefit of being the administrator of it, and if I don't do it, I'll be replaced by someone else who's going to do it.
I'm sorry. So there's only one government, using the indifference of the female voter. I mean, the
Well,
female
Claire,
voter.
you answer the question then, Claire. Why you seem to be making the claim, obviously, that it's a deliberate strategy to, like, breed white people out. Why are they doing it then?
No, I'm not
You
saying
tell
it's
us.
necessarily deliberate. I mean, but
It's the
anyway,
Jacob answer. If I
would
don't do
it
it, someone else
matter
will.
if it was deliberate or malicious or through indifference? And I'm saying what they do is account on the indifference of the female voter.
So you are saying it's deliberate then, if they're counting on the indifference to do it. You're saying the intention is that they want to do it deliberately.
Or they think
Why
they
is
can get away
why?
with it.
Yeah, that implies they want to do. They know what they're doing and they're doing it,
It's really
because
the
they know
same
they
thing
can
with
get away with it.
Israel. It's really the same thing with Israel and Palestine. It's like a land for a people, for a people for a land without a people. And so people are looking at the UK and the West in general as land for people for whatever the case. They're just looking at um, the West as the open frontier to be conquered, and if they don't do it, someone else will. And
Sorry,
like
who will do it?
maybe
Who
Stephen,
will do it?
whether
I mean, basically, the government is just saying, come on in, and the men are just so helpless; they can't do anything, and their government doesn't care. And
yeah, I mean, you could just be victim blaming, but like, no, not necessarily. Like, they could be doing everything they can. It's just like their
they're
forces are
not
too
doing
strong
anything.
to change the
We're just
migration
we're just
patterns.
moaning on YouTube, right? They're just moaning on YouTube, saying,
Yeah, because they can't do anything about it anyways. The forces are too strong. It's like
they don't even want to examine the causes or analyze what might be happening. Anyway, they prefer the narrative that Jews did it to them, and you've confirmed it for David, and who went away very happy that you said what you know what he thought all
Well, I
along.
think David. I
He
think
was,
David's never.
effusive in his thanks for you.
I think David's never encountered Doooovid before, so this
I mean,
is
he's
often a
shocked
thing
that
when people.
someone's
Yeah,
saying
somebody's
like, yeah,
open.
my yes, but so like usually he gets the Joseph Cohn, argue on every point, or you're an anti-Semite, as where Doovid's yes, but was like sufficiently shocking to get a yes, but, and he didn't even have time for the but. He was just giddy enough to get the yes. But I'm even saying, just
Yeah.
like Stephen didn't do anything wrong. It's just his neighborhood is ripe for the taking. And at the certain point, there's enough force that, like if Jacob doesn't do it, someone else will. And there's a lot of different factors.
Jacob?
I mean, Jacob, the guy in the famous video with the "if I don't steal it, someone else will," and then Jacob also, Jacob from the Bible, Jacob Israel, Jacob the Jews. So like if Jacob doesn't do it, someone else will. If the Jews don't profit from or take part in so to say, the plundering of Stephen's land, someone else will. It's not happening because of
Who
the
will
Jews.
do it?
The
You're saying
Jews
the
just might be
Muslims.
opportunistic in the sense that they see the the profit for the plunder, and they're maybe the first ones in on it. But if it's not like Stephen's neighborhood's not going to get demographically replaced, it's only because of the Jews. It's because of larger forces. It's because of open pasture. It's because of your population inequalities. There's a whole bunch of factors why there's a
Okay,
whole
but
bunch of
basically
people.
their government doesn't care, right? That's why it's happening.
No,
The
it's
government
because
doesn't give
people
a
like
damn
it's because people like
because
your
it's a
parents wanted to.
matriarchy.
No, Claire, it's saying people like your mother wanted a better life for you, and they were going to find a way to get that no matter what
But my
rule.
mother doesn't live in the UK.
But I'm saying it's like, well, why are you here? You're here because you want a better life for yourself, and you don't care whether people dislike you or not. Like, you're going to go on and get what's yours, and whether the Jews help you or not. And so if the Jews help you get what yours and get ahead, you'll take the Jews' help. If they don't, you're going to try to get what's
Why
yours
do you even
anyway.
have to mention the Jews? I mean, really, it's the British government. The British government choose to have open immigration. The American government chooses to have immigration. What do you think are the operating reasons?
You're giving
Why do you have to?
because people don't believe the system actually works that way. You're just believing what most
Okay, they
people
prefer
don't.
the
Well, it's a
Jewish
democracy,
conspiracy
and if the
theories,
government
yes?
did it, it's because it's a. But I'd say most people, most going on, most Westerners don't actually believe that democracy works that way.
Okay, but it still means that their government allows it.
Because
Right? I
you
mean,
don't want
their
to put you don't
government
want to put
allows it.
yourself as a malicious actor. So you're like a settler. Claire is like a settler, and you want to say like, no, I'm not a settler. Like like I did
No,
everything.
it's nothing to do with me. We are asking why the British government allows it. That's what we want to focus on, isn't it?
Yeah, but they
Why
didn't
you?
allow it. It was people like you that pressured the British government.
No, I didn't do anything. I couldn't come if I couldn't get a student visa.
But I say you came even though you weren't wanted.
So the British didn't want students to come.
Well, there might have been
Well,
some.
why are you
You
talking
weren't.
about me as if I was some fucking migrant? I came on a student visa. So why are you thinking I came, with the migrant hordes? That wasn't
Because you're
how I
just like
came.
Jacob. If you didn't do it, someone else would have.
No, I came on a student visa. The British government welcomes students. It's money for them. So why are you talking as if it was something sinister, that there was some, a horde of yellow peril coming to this country? The British government welcomes students. They issue student visas. Universities and educational establishments welcome foreign money.
Yeah, and eventually they're going to welcome people like you into Stephen's neighborhood.
Well, they have to live somewhere, don't they? You want students to come and pay overseas student fees. I mean, they have to come in,
Well, so why
live
didn't you take
somewhere.
your education and go back to where you came
But
from?
we're not talking about students who might settle afterwards. We're talking about Gazans who are migrants forced upon Western governments
Yeah,
by
but I'm saying,
America, right?
Well,
The Gaz.
you see what I'm saying, Steve? It's basically just a reverse settler colonial project, and like now it's
Why do you
you,
make things so
and
complicated?
now it's you that are the victim of settler colonialism,
yeah,
I'm
no,
not.
I see it.
and it's the new multicultural global empire that is
It's the
colonizing.
American empire
And saying
rubbing
Claire
the
is the
noses of
settler
its
of the
vassal
reverse
states.
multicultural global settler
Yeah, yeah.
colonialism.
It's so basically it's America treating its vassal states as if it were its own country. Like, well, we're just going to move, people and goods and
Well,
whatever
to be fair,
around.
Claire, I don't think America is moving like Pakistanis into England.
So America's nothing to do with Israel.
Well, is America
America
moving
just is.
Pakistanis into Britain? I don't
Yeah,
think
even
that's
if you look
like the
like in the
cause.
Okay,
U.S., President
that's a
Trump
bit
ran
different,
on.
isn't it? It's a bit different, isn't it? I mean, Britain allowed
President
the
Trump ran on
Pakistanis to move in.
anti-immigration. He did everything in his power, largely to stop immigration. But immigration still increased under President Trump. Still, millions of people came to the United States, even with the most anti-immigrant president in decades.
So I guess Trump didn't mean it, or there is some problem with the
The forces were
indigenous
too
people,
strong to stop.
or that there is a genuine labor shortage, or the indigenous are just so useless they can't do anything. And if you want any work to be done, it has to be done by a foreigner.
Well, you would say the forces means saying that economic prices to drive the cost of labor down. That foreigners are willing to do the same work of the natives for a cheaper price. Some of them could do the same labor better for a cheaper price, and therefore you keep on getting immigration. You can't stop it. So even though President Trump was against it, at the end of the day, he's still, like his companies. Well, how come you're using these laborers? Because they do a better job and they charge less money.
Okay, so would
And then
you
like
say it's a
Claire,
lack
well,
of an
how come you
investment
stayed in
in?
London as opposed to going back to where you came from? Because you get paid more. Because you have a better quality of living staying. You would have you're saying you could move into Stephen's neighborhood and have a house and much better things than you have if you went back to Malaysia.
Okay, so you're using me again. I don't want to go and move into Stephen's neighborhood. I'm not a migrant horde. Why don't you make the distinction between Gazans coming
Well,
to Finchley in hordes and me? You don't want to make the distinction, do you? You're doing it on purpose. I mean,
Well, I mean, you say because you're
we're
educated.
talking about
but
Gazans.
Claire, to be honest though, I mean, Doooovid does have a point that at the end of the day, it doesn't matter why people come here. Okay, whether they are coming here for good reasons or not.
It doesn't matter
At the end of the day,
why people come, because your government allows it, right? Your government allows it, and I'm just asking you why you think your government allows it, and why your government
because their
doesn't give a shit
government
about
doesn't
you.
have the power to stop it. I mean, it'd be the same way saying well, how come Israeli keep on making new settlements? I mean, because the Palestinian government allows it. And well, no, because they don't have the power to stop it. So at the same time, you say, well, is this government allowing? They just don't have the power to stop it.
Or the government just doesn't give a shit about its own people, or that the government.
So look, to some extent, I don't like playing into the idea that Claire often brings up that we need migrant workers, but to some extent, it is true. Okay, to some extent, it is true through dereliction of our own like societies and industries and training our own people. We have gotten into this point where we have become reliant upon migrant labor of kinds. I see it when I go to work. I have to pass through this industrial estate when I go to work, and when I'm on my way to work at 6 o'clock in the morning, it's like Mogadishu and like little Islamabad. It's crazy. All these people like just in the industrial estate, pouring in and out of these factories and warehouses. And so to some extent, all these people are like doing these menial jobs, and so like all the warehouses and the factories are being powered by all this labor. But so to some extent that is true. So there's economic forces that are at play here, and like the economies are so at such a precarious state that like to just immediately reverse to stop this kind of thing would take huge investments in the country to get all that kind of stuff going again.
I mean, it's kind of like Ralph and Alex Jones and the philo-Semitic conspiracy theorists that are still anti-globalist, like it's the globalist, thinking that there's some nefarious cabal of globalist, but it's not Jewish in the sense, and even thinking it's a cabal, just saying there's a force of globalism, and you either think that this force is going to win and get on board with it, and you say, well, globalism makes sense. Nationalism, was an old system, and we now live in a global world, so I'm becoming a globalist. And you could argue that Judaism, Jews in general, tend towards globalism, fare better in a globalist environment than a nationalist. Like, not all, but like generally Judaism has a globalist outlook. It's more prepared for the global environment, but there's also just natural forces towards globalism. And globalism might win out. And so if you're white, European, and you just see that globalism is going to win, like the nationalism battle is a losing battle, so I'm going to join the globalist cause because I think I think they're going to win. And so probably in the higher rungs of power, that's just the way people see it. They see globalism is going to win. I'm going to side with the winning team.
There are political parties who are against globalism. So shouldn't they work out what the problem is? So, well, I'm talking about the BNP and the UKIP and anti-immigration parties like that. So
yeah, but all the
BNP is a dead party.
Are basically pro-globalist to different extents. So I mean, you're talking like the extreme nationalist parties, and even maybe some countries, the nationalist party is getting 20% of the vote or the combined. But still, like the majority of leadership is leaning globalist, and it's probably because they've made an honest analysis of the situation. They said globalism is inevitable. Why would I want to be on the losing side?
I don't think it's just that. It's just that
even Stephen, like Doooovid talking with Stephen, he'd be like,
I said anti-immigration
talk with all these people, but eventually Stephen could be through enough of this. He'd be like, okay, like globalism's going to win. Like I don't want to be a loser. And he's got to prepare himself for the global world.
We're talking about these sort of, people who are indifferent, who basically regard voting as a kind of backing of the horse.
It's like Luke Ford talking about Palestinians and like.
I'm not talking about Palestinian.
Like, if I were Palestinian, I'd just pack up and leave.
I just want to make my fucking point, and you won't let me. And my point is very simple.
Go on.
Okay, yeah. Doooovid wins again. Get Stephen to defend Claire.
Well, if you keep talking...
Come on, Claire. Spit your point out.
Silence, woman. Silence, woman.
No. There you go again. Just keep going.
Okay, like we got the feminist Steve who's going to white knight for Claire.
No.
You
keep
absolutely
talking
not.
Like, you keep talking over me. Yes, come on, Doooovid. Just keep talking over me.
Okay, get your white knight Steve.
No, there's no need. So my simple point is that anti-immigration parties are basically low-status losers. And nobody cares about them. And cool. What's so funny, Stephen?
Sorry. I'll mute.
No, you know what I'm going to say. So say it for me.
Okay.
No, I was laughing at Doooovid calling me a white knight. Come on. Get your point out.
Master Claire. Yes, Master Claire. Whatever you say, I will team up and fight the evil Doooovid on your behalf. I will white knight and team up against Doooovid because Doooovid is not giving you the respect you deserve.
Doooovid, you want your narrative that it's some sort of Jewish conspiracy. Well, why do you want it to be a Jewish conspiracy?
It's not a Jewish
Or a
conspiracy. I think
Jew?
they're greater
So why do you
forces.
want it to be a Jewish conspiracy?
It's not a Jewish conspiracy.
It's your LARP, isn't it? I am the ideal Jew that anti-Semites love to hate. Look at me with my yarmulke. Oh, I'm
Just having an
gonna
open
be this
conversation, like,
Jew.
no, like, God forbid, it's not a Jewish conspiracy. Globalism is a natural force. Jews tend to be on the globalist side.
Oh, well,
But
so
globalism is not a
clever, so
Jewish
clever of
conspiracy.
Jews.
Globalism
It's
is
so
an
clever
impending
of Jews
reality.
to invite all these Gazans who want to kill them. That's so clever of them.
That's also not a Jewish conspiracy. These are just natural forces.
So are Jews actively inviting all these Gazans to come into their Western countries? I mean, they're all these Muslims murdering Jews in France. That's very clever of Jews, is it?
No, I mean, the Gazans are a hit for Zionism. So, I mean, God forbid, generally, like, the Gazans coming to the West is going to be a hit that we're going to have to take for the sake of Zionists, for the sake of Israel. And that's what Luke
And I
Ford
think
was
Doooovid,
Luke Ford was
the
complaining
point,
the other day, saying, like, how come they're fighting? Like, what do they want to live? Like, why would you want to, fight and die? Like, the Israelis are clearly so much more powerful. Just take the free citizenship in the West and come have a better life.
Yeah, but Luke
And it's
has no
really, but that's the same
principles,
argument
does
with
he?
Stephen
He
James and
has no
nationalism and
principles.
globalism.
He is
Like,
a
why are you fighting it,
nihilist.
Steve? Don't you
Yeah,
see?
he
Don't
has
you see
no
the globalists are going to
principles.
win? And you're just going to be
We're
like the
talking about
Palestinian.
people who have no principles. But I would have thought that Jews are supposed to have principles.
Yeah, everyone could be principles. So if the principles are going to stay,
Yeah, I
fight,
mean
and die,
that's what religion is about,
yeah, I
isn't
mean,
it?
some will. And so
Okay, so
even
you're
Steve here
representing
is
these Jews who
considering
have no
jumping boat and
principles.
becoming a globalist because he's like, he doesn't want to be on the losing side. If
Yeah,
globalism is
but I mean,
inevitable,
why
he's going
do
to
we
be
use
principled and,
Luke as
like
some
die on
kind
the
of
battlefield
ideal Jew
for what?
when he has no principles?
Where you say what principle is Steve going
what?
to have
Hold
in,
on,
in, in
hold
fighting?
on.
You're going to die on the battlefield against globalism for what? For your principles?
Well, that's what
Hold on.
religion is about, isn't it?
So look, at the end of the day, everybody looks out for their own interests, and they.
Okay, so we're saying everybody has no principles, and that's out of the way to. I mean, but we're
No,
still
to a
talking
certain
about
extent, for a good length of time, looking out for your own interest is to look out for your group interest. If there is any chance at that whatsoever, to maintain the group strength. And then when all that fails, it's like, God forbid, at some point you have to say, oh, now I'm going to look out for number one.
How are you going to look out for number one?
By becoming a globalist.
Well, I wouldn't go. I wouldn't go
so
that
he-
far,
he-
but maybe
so
by
Duke is
just
adopting the.
probably by white flight, probably disappear somewhere better.
Okay, so the more
But
you
where are you going to
Cut and
disappear
run.
better?
treat, the more they
You're
advance.
going to disappear
not
further into the
viable.
countryside. You're not going to disappear to somewhere better. Or you're going to become a globalist. I mean, really, those are your options. You could stay and fight. In the fight, you'll probably lose. You could disappear further into the countryside. And even there, like, eventually the fight will reach you further on the countryside. Or
You could take a
become a
principal
globalist.
couldn't you?
Well,
Is that
no, I mean,
completely unheard? Is it completely unheard?
at my level,
of?
I am neither. I'm neither a globalist or an anti-globalist. I'm such a pawn in this game. It doesn't matter what position I take. For me, it's just about where I would rather live out my days.
Well, you can't predict the future, can you? But surely, as men, you're supposed to solve problems, but you're just bending with the wind and not really thinking about the future, and that's why I guess your women have given up on you, and that's why they keep voting for these pro-immigration parties that are replacing you, that some of you are going to attribute to a Jewish conspiracy, but it's really the indifference of your women. You keep voting for these pro-immigration parties.
Look, at the end of the day, women do what the television tells them to do, Claire.
Yeah, so
90% of it. So at some
So
level, it's the media that they consume. Okay,
Okay,
and the media that
so-
they consume is kind of curated for them by big interests.
And there's nothing you can do about it, and nothing you propose to do about it. It's
Well,
just
end of the day,
that's
like
the way
Well,
life is.
it's a
rational
difficult
actor
task.
theory, everybody just acts in their own self-interest. And you're saying, well, yeah, it's in your self-interest for your group
It's
to
in your
win,
own
but
self-interest to
when your
vote
group's not
Democrat,
going to
is it?
win, you still have self-interest with your group
Okay, but
as
I
an
mean, can't you
individual.
theorize about what is the problem without just saying, "Oh, I'm just going to vote Democrat"?
Look, they all.
That's what you're doing, isn't
Here's the
it?
thing.
You're
Here's the
just going to
thing.
vote Democrat.
There's no way tomorrow to vote our way out of this situation. So the only potential option,
Yes,
the
sure.
apart from a power cut and a chimp out, okay, some kind of black swan event, which I don't advocate for, by the way, something like that, some kind of physical situation, again, which I don't advocate for, then the only other option on the table is to attempt to change the culture somehow, believing that
Or at least,
politics or political change is downstream from culture, and therefore, if you look at what the original growth of this alt-right thing that started, that was an attempt to do it, but it got crushed under the
it got
forces.
crushed because they were just, stupid people who kept repeating their Jewish conspiracy theories, thereby
Yes,
lowering
it was a
themselves in
stupid. Yes,
status so that
it did end up. It did
nobody
end
would
up
listen
like
to
that.
them.
Yes, that was part of the problem. That was part of the problem. It was
Well, they're still
a
doing it.
foolish. It was another foolish attempt at it, but yeah,
And they
anything like
refuse to discuss solutions. We know who we're talking about.
the only reason I talk about it on the internet is that it might be beneficial somewhat in the future, and in one day I might have thousands of followers and might be able to do something very, very tiny, affect 0.0000001% of somebody who might one day listen and have some influence.
Yeah, but then you need to discuss what you think is a problem before you can propose a solution.
The problem
And
is that it where I live doesn't look like me anymore. That's the
okay,
problem,
so
Claire.
they put all these migrants in your town, and I also know that Brutus in Devon has said, well, they put all those migrants in Devon. Yes, that was what he said in his Christmas dream or something.
Well, I mean,
And
Yeah. Migrants have been shipped around the country, and they're being put in all areas of the country, under the guise of we have this illegal
in
migration
Wales,
problem.
in Scotland, everywhere. So why
We
don't
don't know
you
where
say
to put them.
yeah, I mean, it kind of goes to this tunnel thing at 770, where really it's like a tunnel network to house illegal Israeli immigrants who are looking to make greener pastures in other areas in the West, that they come to first stop from Israel to Brooklyn to the tunnels of 770 to eventually move their way into wider America. And 770 is like the training ground for assimilation to larger America.
Hmm.
And that's really the same with basically every neighborhood in London, where it's it's like a bouncing ground for move to that neighborhood, get it assimilated, and then eventually you're going to move further onto greener pastures. So it's like the reverse colonial settler project. And so you look at the tunnel network, it's saying, why the hell would someone be living in tunnels under 770 in some synagogue? Because eventually they're going to move on to greener pastures of the larger reverse colonial settler project.
So did we decide? I think I might have fallen asleep about what the tunnels were for.
They were because people were living there, and they were mostly
People
I
were
think we
Israeli.
living
hit
there.
on a good point. I think we hit on a good point that this is probably a hub, housing loads of illegals, facilitating illegal immigration, people overstaying their visas, hiding from the draft in Israel, that kind of thing.
Again, it's an international network that they could get from there to basically any place in the world. So it's like, okay, just live in the basement of Crown Heights in 770, and eventually you'll meet the right people, and you'll move on to greener pastures and become part of the reverse settler colonial project of, and you'll be in charge of white people in some new neighborhood.
Yeah, look, everybody's going to be pushing back at me, saying as they do every single time I do stream with Doooovid, saying, look, you didn't push back about like calling it a baby rape dungeon and all this kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, I don't believe it. To be honest, I
Yeah,
don't
there's no
believe that
evidence for that.
story.
I mean, there's
It
substantial evidence
just
that
doesn't look likely.
it was, and they're probably not even, call them illegal immigrants because Israel has the visa waiver program, but
Oh, right,
it was basically just a network for Israelis to move to America, and the first place you
Joe,
start is in the basement of 770.
Joe
And
is
there's just so
desperate to
many of
find
them.
out.
There's just so many of them that they had to build like an illegal tunnel network to house all of the, so to say, Israeli immigrants into America, especially
Joe
with
is
the war
desperate.
going on now. And like, relatively, I doubt they're building tunnels in Stamford Hill, but like relatively, the same thing's probably happening in Stamford Hill, where the neighborhoods are becoming oversaturated with Israelis trying to get out of there, and they're going to temporarily move to Stamford Hill into overcrowded, poor conditions until they could find their way onto greener pastures. And it's the same thing in every other ethnic minority neighborhood.
Look, Joe is desperate for me to ask you if illegal abortions could be being, or just whatever abortions being done in there. Could that be what's been going
Yeah,
on?
I mean, I mentioned that the building in the 1940s, like, but no, I mean that's just, I mean, so it is interesting history that that's what the building was used for in the 1940s before it became Chabad headquarters. But no, I mean, there's no evidence that I've seen for anything nefarious besides for possibly illegal immigration. And
Yeah.
if you think about it, I mean, it's
Well,
like Mexicans or something like that. So you don't think of Jews like that, but just think, but I mean, you just mentioned it when you go to work every day, or you're in the morning, for your jog, and you're at 6 in the morning, and you see all these immigrants going to, you're working hard, and because they're probably living like 10 people in an apartment in some horrible condition, sleeping in some like basement tunnels, and that's why they're working so hard, and like eventually they'll get ahead, and then be able to move into your neighborhood.
yeah.
So
Look, if anybody else, by the way, in the chat has anything that they feel that I should be putting to do, stick it in the chat now, and I'll put it to him because after this stream, I always get so much stick, and some of it's fair enough. By
Joe's
the
a
way,
coward. He's not going to take the link.
no. I mean, if there's stuff that you after the stream you're going to say didn't dare say this to Doooovid, stick it in the chat now, and I'll say it to his face because it is right that in the past, I haven't been assertive enough about some of the stuff, but I don't want you to go away and think that I've been hiding or protecting Doooovid from any hard questions or anything like that. At the end of the day, I just don't believe that baby raping stuff in there. It just sounds absurd to me. I'm not gonna lie, that's just what I think.
Is it even
Yeah, some people.
necessary? Like, if you just say, like, if it's basically what I'm saying, it's like because of illegal immigration, is that
It just
bad
looks
enough?
like a shit stain on a mattress to me, to be honest. Something's just spilled on a fucking mattress.
Yeah, I mean, it could be grape juice or something even, but whatever it is, it just saying, like, clearly what's going on is illegal immigration. And
Yeah.
why are people living in tunnels under a synagogue? And it's saying it, well, because it's a synagogue and they're supporting their international brethren to have a better life in America, even if it goes against immigration laws. And it's unlikely that the minority controlled New York City government is going to clamp down on that. Like, saying, like, relatively, it's just a sign of the larger migration crisis facing New York, and saying, even so, that you have Hasidim illegally immigrating. Now we got Ricardo here.
Doooovid,
Coming soon to a town near you. Those guys, first stop 770, next stop coming soon to a town.
I know
near
they're
you.
tunneling. They're tunneling under my house right now. Did you are these guys that you used to hang out with when you were doing the charity collection? Did you drive any of these guys around?
What? I as a favor, like, saying these guys were like low level schnorrers. I mean, like, I drove.
Who are the guys? The guys that were digging the tunnels? What are you talking about? But I mean, these guys. There's definitely people in charge. There's definitely people in charge, right?
Yeah.
But
So
did you guys?
the people in the synagogue, they had to have known that there were a whole bunch of people living there, and they probably, like the part of the expansion was probably an illegal construction project. But like, yeah, I don't see anything more nefarious than an illegal expansion without a permit and housing a bunch of you probably Israeli immigrants in the basement.
Yeah, it's like I mean, it's incredible optics. I mean, I love the guy like scurrying up out of the sewer.
Yeah.
It's
And
not
then
the
just the
sewer,
way he ran
it's the
across the
vent
street.
shaft. I mean, you call this, it's a vent shaft.
Are you
I mean,
familiar with
it's
other
not the sewer.
tunnels?
That's from the mechanical room of the building itself. It's not connected to the sewer.
Are you familiar with other tunnel systems under other synagogues?
No, I've never seen that. Like,
I mean,
but
because you had the. Is that why you
I have
became a
seen.
civil?
I
Did you
am
become a
familiar.
civil engineer studying tunnel
Ah!
like synagogue tunneling? Is that where
I
the
mentioned
civil
at the
engineering
beginning,
comes from?
I am familiar with pilgrims and people sleeping in synagogues, and then even people trying to get out of Israel, and that that they would just be living in a synagogue, sleeping in synagogue, even in masses.
Hey, have you guys ever seen? I remember like 3-4 years ago, there were some viral videos of like 200 like teenage Orthodox guys got like dropped off at the country club, and they just started harassing everybody and trying to take their golf carts and all that. Like, is that? I mean, that's the same types of guys as this, right? What is this new term I've learned? Yeah, the Boca Rim. I guess the is that how you pronounce that?
What do you call Boca?
The Boca Raton, Boca Rim.
Well, I mean, yeah, eventually
Isn't
these
it-
people want to make it to Boca Raton. But I mean,
Yeah,
I mean, some
true.
of these might will make it to Boca Raton. Some of them might make it to your neighborhood.
I don't know. This is,
These guys are just a small trickle of the immigration problem facing America. I mean, like New York.
you know the funny part, the funny part that I see of this whole thing is the analogy I would say that most white people think of when they think of like ultra Orthodox Jews is like, oh, they're like Jewish Amish, right? It's like that's the analogy. But see, I just can't
Yeah.
imagine Amish acting like this,
But because
right?
they're like
I mean-
urban Amish, the urban, it could be like they were in urban areas.
That's an interesting theory. I mean, do we think
Amish live
do
on
we
like
think that's
huge, like,
true? I mean, I'm not sure I
because
believe
Amish
that.
came to America so early that they have like huge amounts of like farmland, like thousands and tens, even hundreds of thousands of like square miles.
But these are 115 IQ Jews. I mean, aren't these all Ashkenazi Jews?
Yeah,
Their
but
IQs are astronomical.
but I'm saying your average
So why
Amish,
haven't they
your average Amish have like 100 people.
85 IQs?
Yeah, but saying your average Amish are like 50 people per square mile. Like here in Crown Heights, you have 30,000 people in a square mile.
Dude, Amish breed, man. I don't think that's necessarily true. I think they just like
Yeah, but divided up, it's
successfully
still
like
Amish,
build
maybe you're up
businesses.
to like 300 people per square mile. It's not like the 30,000 per square mile in Crown Heights.
But it's kind of funny to me. It's like the Jewish, or at least this sect of Judaism, which in some ways might be like more of like a fundamentalist sect, or at least fundamentalist rabbinical Judaism, taken to its extreme, doesn't result in like hardworkingness. It's like ultra scamming. It's tunneling other people's buildings. It's living off welfare. You know, like it's like us versus them, taken to the logical extreme. They don't work, and yet they have 8 kids. I mean, they're like ultra blacks.
Well, that's why.
No wonder they're in the same political party.
Did you get my point of this guy David, and saying like to some extent, like even the pro-Palestinian huge mass protests to somewhat favor the Jews, because like multiculturalism is one, immigration has won, and who's going to do something about it in Crown Heights? So like when you have the negotiation between like the black leadership in New York City, how do you think they're going to handle this?
Oh, I think, dude, I just was in New York City like over Christmas, and like I saw a menorah like in every window, and I mean, you know, and like there were no Palestine protests, I mean, it's like outrageous to think that like, oh, you know, Jews are cowering in New York. I mean, there's no question that I don't think any of these guys are going to prison. But like, what's the connection? I mean, I guess for the audience's education, I mean, this is like the breeding. This is like where all the Jewish ethnicity perpetuates itself, because secular Jews do not tend to reproduce, or they outmarry, right? I mean, this is like your future banking class coming out of here.
Well, yeah, and
Management. This
well,
is young man. This is like junior executives. This is the future of management in America, right?
well, okay, like Jews don't really subside on minimum wage labor, but you have your urban core of basically below the poverty line Jews that subside on government aid and charity. So like in Crown Heights, like yeah, you have these are your replacement for, you know, God forbid, the kids that Doooovid didn't have. So like Crown Heights, they're bursting from the seams. Like you got Jews popping out of the sewers. God forbid. There's so many of them that even though, you know, God forbid, Doooovid didn't have kids, like these people are just ready to replace me. And he's saying they're stuck in Crown Heights. They're oversaturated. They're poor. They're crowded. They're living among African Americans. They're getting beat up constantly. They're going to go wherever they're sent. So, you know, if they come to Detroit to replace the kids that Doooovid didn't have, or they go to L.A. to replace the kids that Luke didn't have, yeah, to some extent, it does work like that. Like the poor urban core of ultra Orthodox Jews will eventually, uh, become at least part of the diaspora Jewish elite. And like, you know, they like, you know, say, okay, like, yeah, I grew up in Crown Heights, and whatever, however they made it to, your local neighborhood. And it's similar to like the Mexican, the Mexican that, crossed the border and got on a bus and struggled a few years in New York, and then eventually made it to your local neighborhood where they, lived the American dream by, demographically replacing you.
Right, but like you're a property manager, you're dealing with rents. I mean, if a group of these guys move into your neighborhood, is that better or worse off for you than like the blacks, like in your property values? Like if we're ranking like Hispanics, blacks, and ultra Orthodox Jews, like who do you want as your neighbors?
I mean, they're all generally coming from the welfare class. So like they're not coming as rent payers. So you have did you agree with my assessment of the reverse settler colonial project?
You know, I've been working on my garage. I wasn't able to listen to this whole thing live, unfortunately, but you know, I mean,
But you do see the reverse settler colonial project of the new globalist empire.
yeah,
colonizing
yes.
the
Our
West.
cities, yeah. The third world is colonizing the cities. Yes.
Well, no, the settler colonialism is the red states. So they're not, those people are largely like the migrants. They're largely living off of charity, and they don't yet provide a net positive economic value. So the ones
Right.
that make it to your neighborhood first have to go through some sort of assimilation progress to where they could become a net positive. So it could be like Babs or something. Could like, don't live in the, the tunnels, and I'll train you to be a mortgage broker. And like after 2 years of tutelage under Babs, he could, move to your neighborhood and become like a mortgage broker. In
Okay.
the same way that the Hispanic guy, like after 2 years of
Like
tutelage,
like like
could, he
Slumdog
eventually could
Slumdog
be your
Millionaire.
employer.
So like
And like
Slumdog
you will help
Millionaire.
out in the reverse settler colonial project. I mean, like the 100,000 Hispanics now in New York City, thousands of them will be good workers. And if they are good workers, you will hire them, and you will bring them to your neighborhood, and you will you will help the demographic replacement, because that's the economic model.
Yeah. I don't know. So you still didn't answer the question. Do you want to live next to these guys or black guys?
I live next to black guys. I live in a majority, but I live in a.
So black guys trump these guys.
Well, the ones in my neighborhood. So like relatively Metro Detroit, the area where the Orthodox live is poor area. I mean, there are Jews in my neighborhood, but not like the black hat types. And they're largely priced out of it. Although some of there's some, but you have to move into. It's not just like you're Jewish, you're rich. You have to have the value proposition. I mean, you could succeed in any of the major professions: real estate, insurance brokerage, mortgage brokering, stock brokering, middlemen, import, export, so on and so on. But it's not just like natural. You're not going to come straight from the tunnel network to like an import export business. But you could work your way up, and the ones that work their way up will eventually make it into my neighborhood or better. But by the time they get into my neighborhood, they're not going to be like Karate like that anymore. I mean, just like like Doooovid, when I worked for the Hasidim, I took Hispanic guys straight off the street, and
Wait, cleared them out. You're like, this is our neighborhood. Busted some kneecaps.
no, God forbid. Like I took the van, and I got like 6 a.m. to a street corner, and I gave them work.
Rounded up a bunch of Mexicans. Oh, okay.
Work for construction, but it's saying there were low-level jobs where you could take just a guy off the street who may not have any skills, and he could do like schlepping or dismantling or carrying things to sometimes you'd have to ask him, like, depending on what you need. So if you need someone with like some carpentry or tile skills, you could occasionally pull up on the corner, and then once you've got a few skilled guys, you could get their number, their contact, or they could bring you directly. But like still many times, like if it was low-level labor, I just went to the corner where they stood and picked them straight up from the street for a day's labor. But then
and for those that aren't Americans, that's day labor. That's how we put illegal immigrants to work. It's illegal. It's
do they have that in your
taking
neighborhood?
advantage. Not. I
You're
mean,
saying
I live
you've never
away.
done
I
that?
live away from. I try to live away from the 7-Elevens that they collect at.
Yeah, but I can't imagine that it's more than 5-10 miles from wherever you are till someplace where Hispanic day labor.
Oh, sure. There's definitely a Spanish area. There's Spanish areas.
So you've never
there's
once
black
done
areas.
that in your life, picked up Hispanic day laborers?
Yeah, of course. But like,
You say, of course,
like that's my
of course
business.
you picked up
Well,
Hispanic day
I
laborers.
mean, no, but I mean, like to come work in my yard, not to like be the illegal immigrant broker. I mean, I know those
Not
kinds
illegal
of guys.
immigrant, but I'm saying just what
It's like a pimp, man. Anytime you're in the black market, like if I'm dealing in illegal labor, it's just
not
an
dealing,
unsavory
but
situation.
you did yard simple, unskilled labor where you wanted the cheapest price, or you wanted hard work, so you went to where the Hispanic day laborers stood. You filled up a car.
I mean,
with
I
you
haven't actually been. I have participated. I have not been the actual person to like make the decision to go get the Mexican and pay him, but I have participated in that.
You're saying that
I'm saying that over my lifetime, I've worked on construction crews or in situations or had projects that have involved these guys, but like
you never picked them up. You never.
I never pick them up. I'm not paying them. No.
Yeah, I never paid them myself, but like, yeah, I picked them up like 50 times, and I've worked hundreds of times. But I worked in more skilled labor where they're all Hispanics, but they weren't coming for. Some of these guys started on street corners, but some of these guys were making like $100,000 a year, and eventually became subcontractors. But they started on street corners, and like relatively, that guy who started on a street corner and eventually became a subcontractor, and then like I got to get the hell out of eventually was able to get a family and married, and then like I got to get the hell out of a city, but then he's already got a skill and he could move into any place across the country, and you become that's similar to the Judaic process where what I was saying, it's similar, that it's saying these guys are eventually, they're not going to become day laborers like that, but like a lot of them will eventually come insurance brokers, mortgage brokers, real estate agents,
deal makers, recruiters,
import, export deal. Some of them might even become landlords.
God forbid.
It's saying that someone I spoke.
I
to
know
Tilly
it's a way
there.
to make money without working. It's. Would you say that the ultra is like, how do I
You can't
make
make
money
money
without
without
doing work?
working. You could make money without labor, but it's saying like management, but you can't make money without working.
Right.
And so, like,
I guess. Listen, I've got to run. I mean, I guess my final question, I just take it off the air, is like what Doooovid thinks how this is going to like go with like the overall culture, if this is just like a weird right wing internet phenomenon. Anyway, it was nice talking to both of you. I'll talk to y'all later.
yeah, it's
Thank
just
you for coming, dude.
this is completely meaningless. It's just an interesting story. It's funny, especially with all the tunnel things and happening in Israel. But like, no, I don't think it has any greater significance. Like, if you're following the news, the migrant crisis is huge. Like, there's overflowing. There's like temporarily homeless shelters everywhere. So like the Jewish ones, like they're living in the basements of synagogues, and there's so many Jewish migrants that they have to build tunnels to house more of them. But besides from that, it's just like a funny meme, and but it is indicative from the Judaic perspective. It's a little indicative of Zionism and the Israeli, because like the Messianics are more Zionistic and pro-Israel, Hebrew speaking, versus like the Ashkenazi original followers of the Rebbe that all came from Europe. So it could also be symbolic of like the Israelis taking over the the central Chabad from Brooklyn. That's also symbolic of power struggles among Judaism. But I mean, you think it means something bigger, Steve, or just like a funny meme that became an interesting story? But all it is symbolic of the huge mass migration, that there's so many immigrants of all sorts, that
Yeah.
Jews are digging tunnels to sleep in basements of synagogues.
Yeah, I don't know. I had some. The only other theory that I've heard about it is that somebody was saying these guys are like Trump's faction of Jews, if they're anybody's faction, and that this could be something to do related to that, some kind of like fight back against the Trump stuff. Would these be Trump's faction of Jews?
Well, that is the
The
case,
Netanyahu faction, yeah.
but it's in the case that they're saying like you could be successful in America. You could eventually become like Trump University. You could eventually become a landlord and a millionaire, and that's why they're sleeping in tunnels in a basement of a synagogue, because they're buying the Trump dream that like one day they're going to be a millionaire.
No. What I was saying is this could be some kind of like political attack upon like Trump's support base or something like that. I don't know. The fact that these tunnels were exposed and more could be exposed about this synagogue and Chabad Lubavitch, and it could be like an attack upon Chabad Lubavitch because they're Trump's Jews, basically.
I don't think so. Maybe because
No.
Chabad's an international movement. It just started there. It's not ran out of there anymore. It's just a pilgrimage site. Trump. I don't think Trump ever went to 770. Ivanka went to the graveyard. I don't know if she ever went to 770. Like, they're meeting with powerful Chabad rabbis in like Beverly Hills and Manhattan, and just because the movement started there, it could be.
What about Kushner?
I don't even know if I've seen Kushner anything about him in 770. I mean, like, Kushner went to Chabad at Harvard, so like the Chabad rabbi at Harvard probably started at 770. But like, does Kushner really care? Like, he likes Chabad, he supported Chabad, but like that's because there's Chabad at Harvard, and just because Chabad at Harvard comes from historically there at this point, it's just a historical religious significance that I doubt even Kushner cares about. At this point, it's like, well, the power is like, I don't care how you got the power. Now that you have the power, I care. Or or a group, like it's a little interest of the rise and fall of people. But at this point, people just care that Chabad is a globally powerful network. And I mean, the war in Russia and Ukraine has definitely been a diminishment of global Chabad. And this story will be an embarrassment to global Chabad. So like, if you're Chabad, you're pushing yourself. Like, Chabad has become a brand, and like McDonald's or something, like a synagogue, a Jewish center, and you want to come and like I'm Chabad, and so yeah, I mean it's definitely an effect on the brand, and it's also related to the war, because like Chabad at this point is largely Zionist and pro-Israel, so they're also backing the war. So yeah, there could be a diminishment in the brand of Chabad, and probably more related to the war in Israel and Netanyahu. But this story, yeah, just makes them look bad, silly. Like what the hell? This global power network that like it's trying to sell us the war, and all these various things that they has this unexplainable, uh, just crazy, weird phenomenon that leads to conspiracy theories.
Yeah, it's bad for Jews, full stop, isn't it? I mean, the Jewish brand, Doooovid, has taken so many hits in the last few months. It's pretty crazy. Optics are bad on this one. Again, it's like another chink of the armor being
Yes, I mean,
taken out.
I think the war in Israel, like the God forbid the Gaza,
Yeah, that's the big one.
That's the real one. So the fact that like Jews started off with a rough time. So like I think the tunnel story actually could be spun off as a positive. So it's like, oh, this Chabad global network cabal of Jews, like saying like, no, that Chabad rabbi that like supposedly had all that power, like he started out sleeping in tunnels at a synagogue. Like he wasn't handed a silver spoon. Like he worked for it. He started with nothing, just a dream, and went to a town and then eventually rose to power. So like I think you could actually spin the tunnel thing into something positive. I think it's more the thing in Israel, although like
maybe amongst Jews, it doesn't look good outside of Judaism.
More like
I don't think.
Epstein and the Hamas tunnel thing. So if it wasn't the Epstein and the Hamas tunnel thing going on at the same time, I don't think it'd be so conspiracy, because you're tying it. Like Chabad is this global, powerful Jewish organization, and then stuff with Epstein's coming out, so they're probably doing the same thing as Epstein, or the Hamas tunnels is probably the same thing, as opposed to if it was the only story, it would just be like, oh, I didn't know there were poor Jews. I didn't know that there was such a thing as like Crown Heights, where Jews are so poor that they're like sleeping in mattresses in illegal tunnels under buildings. And I think actually, like compared to the stereotype that that's actually good for Jews, like no, not all Jews are rich. You're like Joseph Cohn or something, like no, that's an anti-Semitic stereotype. Don't you know in Crown Heights there's Jews that are so poor they're sleeping in mattresses under tunnels and buildings? You don't see that angle? But
I suppose I do.
In Israel stuff, no one's going to focus on like, oh my God, there's Jews that are so poor that they're sleeping in tunnels under buildings.
Colin Liddell is here. Welcome, Colin. You're muted, dude.
So was Colin shocked that there's Jews so poor that, or he thinks the conspiracy, he thinks it's like Epstein conspiracy?
I'm sure Colin will have a very reasonable take.
Yes, there are Jews that are so poor that they're sleeping in illegal tunnels under a synagogue in Brooklyn.
Well, this is a very minor story, that there are some Jews living in New York and that they behave in occasionally eccentric ways.
Well,
I just think it's a real pity that
it's not just Jews, it's Chabad, because like these are the same people that go around the world. So it's like, okay, like these rabbis that like all over the world, like it's these guys, and that's why they're doing it. But that's why they're going to such humble, poor conditions, because of the dream that they're being sold.
Well,
that one
how
day.
long has this stream been running, by the way?
3 hours.
And what have you mainly been talking about?
It's varied. Like the first hour was me just giving a history of Chabad. That guy.
So basically, you've been talking about Jews for 3 hours. Why?
Because that's what I do. Like, I talk about
have
Jews.
You got anything else going on in your life that you have to spend 3 hours in just one night talking about Jews, and as if it's important?
It is.
Why is it important?
Because that's my favorite song. I love Jews. I love talking about Jews.
Chabad, well, you like it, but I mean, why is
to Steve? I don't know. Like Steve just gives me the opportunity to.
Yeah, I know. But why does he have you on?
I don't even know who the hell Steve is.
To listen to people talking about a really unimportant story.
I kind of like Steve. I don't even know who the hell this guy is. I kind of like him, but he gives me a platform to talk about Jews. I take it.
But honestly, I mean, I just don't see why this is important.
Well, 50 people are tuning in. I don't know.
No, I
People are
mean the
interested.
story.
Super
I mean,
chats.
obviously, people like the Jew story. They find it
Yeah.
interesting. It satisfies them in some way. It fills
Mm.
some weird need. But why does it have any greater significance? Because I just find it incredibly trivial and therefore quite boring.
Well, I
my
think it
life
was just
is
that
different. I mean,
Jews are
you're
exposed for
asking me.
something. You know, Jews have got secrets, basically, and they were exposed.
Well, they're just, yeah, so what? So is everybody, you know, there's all sorts of funny groups in New York, and New York's full of pretty weird people. I mean, I went there once, and every day was like a complete zoo and freak show.
Yeah.
And even the homeless
Pretty bad,
crisis
isn't
is like there's there's like now is the biggest homeless crisis ever in New York. Did you see that video of like the guy sleeping in the subway where they lifted up the thing? There are like hundreds of rats coming out, but like God forbid there's homeless everywhere, and the fact that you get like homeless Jews sleeping in tunnels in a synagogue is I mean, I guess it's more interesting to people is like that.
Well, yeah, it's all catnip for anti-Semites, really. Anti-Semites are looking at this. You know, I remember, I know which clip you're referring to about the homeless person with the rats, Jews coming out of drains. It's all being sort of memed together, and I wouldn't be surprised if there were, you know, kind of more sinister hands behind this, because it seems a bit contrived to me.
Yeah, I agree, but I was willing to take it because like I just love talking about Jews and I love Chabad. I've been there many times,
Well,
and
it's okay for people to have, you know, odd hobbies and interests, and to be interested in Jews or whatever, the peculiarities of Jews. But what sort of irritates me is the way that so many people in the so-called dissident right seem to connect it all to the problems of white people, and it's obviously not connected to the problems of white people.
yeah, that's what I was saying about Jews are just opportunistic and benefit from multiculturalism and demographic change, but Jews are not the cause of multiculturalism and demographic change. We just benefit from it.
How do you benefit from it exactly?
Well, there's multiple ways, but I mean, one thing it allows us a clear path to power in the sense of if you have a white hegemony majority, it's much more difficult for Jews to rise to power as a minority. But in a multicultural area, it's easier for Jews to rise to power. And
But in a multicultural society, nobody rises to power. You know, it just becomes either chaos or one group imposes its will on the others, and then you have a tyranny. And obviously, you know, Jews are incapable of imposing a tyranny over a multicultural society because they haven't actually done that anywhere.
yeah, I would agree. Power is an illusion. Power is the wrong
See,
word.
this is what the
But,
dissident
like,
right believes. This dissident right literally believes that the Jews have imposed a tyranny over white society, and that their only example of this happening is the present day, and it's not actually true.
Yeah, I don't think Jews aren't.
I mean, if you
imposing it.
push them, they'll say, "Oh, what about the Soviet Union?" But the Soviet Union wasn't a Jewish-controlled society. The Jews got persecuted in the Soviet Union. Early on, they were quite prominent in the revolutionary movement, but they were soon sidelined and pushed down.
Well, I mean, the one example of so to say that Jews are largely given a pass to behave as Jews under the guise of multiculturalism. Like if you look at like the synagogue stuff or a lot of the stuff in London in the US, in the all white neighborhoods, we get a ton of pushbacks. Like there's zoning code and you can't do anything. And in multicultural areas, there's no real pushback. It's just like, okay, it's just the Jews doing their thing. Who's going to stop them? And I mean, there's multiple reasons why Jews support multiculturalism and immigration, you know, sympathy from the Holocaust. But even if you disagree that Jews, I mean, I don't think Jews are causing it. I think
Yeah, well, I mean, they're not causing it. I mean, they might feel more comfortable in a more diverse society, but that doesn't have any particular relevance because that multicultural, diverse society is happening anyway, and it would happen whether there were Jews or whether they didn't exist.
Yeah, that's why I said about globalism. I say like generally, Judaism is more probably favorable towards globalism. Jews are probably more adapted to globalism than other peoples and might stand to benefit it. But the pressures of globalism are natural. I don't even think like there's not even like a cabal of globalists pushing globalism. The pressures of globalism are natural. And
Well,
that's
are the Jews actually adept at globalism? Because I think globalism, when you look at it historically, it's a British phenomenon. The British created globalism through naval power and through things like ideas of free trade, which came out of a book by Adam Smith, who wasn't Jewish.
yeah, I mean, I'm saying, I didn't say the Jews create it, but I said the Jews benefit, and the Jews are.
Well, you said they're more adept at globalism, and I mean, I'm saying that's not obviously the case, because there are other groups that are able to deal with globalism and to benefit from it, and Britain's very much a globalist entity.
Obviously, I just said that Jews. I mean, there's the element that Jews are generally bilingual, and there's Jews in most nations. So, like along the Silk Road.
Well, globalism is all about speaking English. Remember, it's not about speaking Hungarian or 5 or 6 Central European languages. It's about speaking English, and that just proves that globalism is essentially an Anglo phenomenon.
Well, only in modern times. So in the ancient times, where you had Jews all around the Silk Road, and if the Jews had a common language, that they say, well, there's Jews who are assimilated.
Well, you had all sorts of people around the Silk Road. I mean, you had a lot of Armenians in the Ottoman Empire. You had all sorts of tribes that specialized in certain trades. So
I agree, but you're saying you're just missing generally consensus, basic understanding that there's a certain benefit that Jews have somewhat of a monolithic culture, and they have a language that you can be involved in international.
My point is that it's very Jewish history is very interesting.
I could go to a non-English speaking country, a place that has different ways. I could team up with the Jews.
Sure. But my point is that no matter how interesting Jewish history might be, it's not particularly relevant or significant, and it seems to get undue attention paid to it, especially on all these distant live streams.
Well,
and I think that's just a bit pathetic and sad, really, and quite boring after a while.
Well, Colin, okay, right. So while you're here, then, Colin, if I may, I know this is not in my interest to do this, and therefore I'll caveat this and present it as here is an anti-Semitic trope or something here, and let's have a look at this. So I'll just share this on the screen like that. I've got that I found on Twitter. So what would you say to this anti-Semitic claim here that says, why are Jews 1,650% overrepresented in the White House? So of the 474 White House staff members, 155 of them are Jewish. That's roughly 33%. Blah, blah, blah. What about something like that?
It sort of reminds me of some of the memes about the Soviet Union and how the Soviet Union was supposedly completely run by Jews. But when you actually look into it, you'll notice that, when you apply an objective analysis of that, it soon falls apart. And
I'll put that link in the chat.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen this meme debunked by several people. So I think if you look into it, it doesn't really hold up. It's just highly selective evidence. So people will look at the evidence that supports their thesis and ignore all the evidence that doesn't. So there's a whole kind of subculture of creating these fake memes and then debunking them. So it just requires a lot of analysis and work.
Well, the link's in the chat. If anybody wishes to do a debunking on that and get back to me, that would be good, and we could talk about it on the next 3-hour Jew stream.
The first hour was kind of just boring Doooovid lecturing on Jewish history or Jewish sociology. And then the second hour got more into conspiracies because people weren't really that interested. Just like the history of Chabad, how they got started, Crown Heights, who are the different factions, why are they fighting over the synagogue, why are there homeless people sleeping in the basement of a synagogue, why are they tunneling, then to the conspiracy type misconstruals of immigration and multiculturalism that because I think that's a big fear among Stephen and his audience. They're scared of immigration and multiculturalism, and maybe even just superstition over Jews that economics or politics, like Colin's a smart man, but your average person, these things are more complicated. It's like Luke Ford and the Magic Key. So then, rather than read Adam Smith or a bunch of political economic history, the Magic Key of the Jews makes more sense to make understanding of it.
Yeah, I don't disagree. Everybody's looking for the magic key. Luke does have a point there, of course.
And just the constant controversy over like Doooovid arguing in favor of multiculturalism immigration, or claiming that multiculturalism and immigration generally goes along with Jewish strategy, to the conspiratorial that Jews are causing multiculturalism and immigration just because Jews are in favor of multiculturalism and immigration, as a general trend.
Well, you can say that, dude. I can't. So.
Well, you can't even say that Jews are in favor overall, or maybe you can. I mean, that's not even that controversial that Jews favor multiculturalism and immigration, to say that Jews are causing it, and then the complications of demographic change and how to deal with it.
Well, I did say earlier, I don't think anybody in particular that I'm aware of, correct me if I'm wrong, is causing Pakistanis to be brought into Britain. So, I don't think there's anybody particularly to blame.
And then
for that as a group.
Considering the audience,
well, there is a group to blame, isn't there? It's actually the British people themselves that are kind of creating the conditions that promote that and allow it.
Well, I mean,
it's probably more healthy to blame yourself than other people, but you could also argue that the British really have no power to stop it. There's just overwhelming forces causing it to happen, and they don't have the power to stop it.
Well, they have the power to stop it, but they've decided that stopping it's too much trouble. It would impinge on their lifestyles too much, and why make a big fuss about it? Maybe it'll be okay. They a lot of them think, oh, never mind, it won't affect me too much, or maybe these people will be fine. They'll fit in, and we'll all live happily together. So there's just a lot of short-termism and naivety involved, and also laziness and unwillingness to change their lifestyles. And that actually has completely nothing to do with a bunch of Jews or people living in tunnels or whatever you want to call them.
Well, you made that statement that you might argue that they have the power to stop it. They might not. And I was...
Oh, they definitely have the power to stop it. Anybody has agency. Anybody can decide that this is actually what I'm doing is not particularly good for me and my group, and why don't I, sort of change course? People do have the power, but they're choosing not to use it. Just because somebody doesn't choose to use power doesn't mean they don't have it.
Yeah, but you say that you have the power to try. It doesn't mean you're going to succeed.
Well, I think if enough people decided to do something about it, then things would happen. But obviously, in the long history of multiculturalism in Britain, and the equally long history of British ethno-nationalism, they've never been able to build up much of a following. In fact, the only thing they could actually build up a following for was leaving the European Union, and thus ensuring that most of the immigration coming into Britain would be non-European.
Yeah, what a scam that was.
What do you take of my point of what I'm calling the reverse settler colonial project of basically new international globalist forces that are reverse settler colonizing the West?
Sorry, could you rephrase that?
The reverse settler colonials project, where global corporate international forces are settler colonizing the West.
With what do you mean? Who's settler colonializing the West exactly?
Well, there is like
phrasing
critical
demographic
race
change,
critical race theory is being used to
No, I was saying that you
tell
have
these people
a new, not
that they can
necessarily
do this.
a cabal or like a conspiracy, but you have forces of globalism and internationalism, and they're bringing people to the West to colonize it in the new global multicultural order. And there's a whole bunch of
I don't think anybody's
institutions
bringing
with it.
people to the West to colonize it.
That's like a Kalergi plan idea, isn't
Well,
it?
well,
I mean, it just
colonize in the
sounds
sense
ludicrously paranoid. I mean, obviously, certain corporations are interested in getting cheap and efficient labor, and they're not really too fussy where it comes from. If they can get somebody who's qualified to do a job and who's going to work more efficiently and more cheaply than people in a Western country, then they're going to do so. And the fact that people in Western countries aren't really replacing themselves in terms of demographics, there's always going to be a suction on immigration. So there's always going to be a steady flow of people who are qualified or talented or who are willing to work hard coming into Western countries, unless you create some sort of system that can legitimately oppose it.
Yeah, but why is colonize not the right word? And just basic send a group of settlers and establish.
Well, colonize is a colony is usually a planned operation. It's part of a bigger plan, and I don't think it is part of a bigger plan. It's just companies trying to make money. That's not a plan. That's just a sort of basic commercial impulse.
Yeah, but it's okay if the conspiracy is not. It's not being led by a group of conspirators. It's being led by natural forces, and it's not just on the lower end.
Well, you've got to worry about how you describe things, because the way you describe things can often create misleading associations and connotations. And I think you just got to look at it in a much more basic term. And the correct way to view it is that Western countries, which are highly affluent for all sorts of reasons, have sub-replacement fertility, and therefore they always have a lack of labor and manpower to do certain tasks, and so they're always going to suck in immigrants unless there is a political decision taken at some level to stop it. And in fact, people go on about British governments being very pro-immigration, but the fact is that most British governments are anti-immigration, and they go to considerable trouble to actually limit immigration. But in the face of the demographic slope that they've created through feminism and individualism and low birth rates, the inevitable effect is that there's going to be a lot more immigration. But they just try to manage it or limit it to some degree.
Well, I was applying the old Zionist slogan to the West, of the reverse settler colonial project that I'm calling it, that a people without a land for land without a people. Is saying the people without a land are wherever the immigrants are coming from, and the land without a people is the West.
Well, it's more like a people without an economy coming to an economy without a people. That would probably be a more astute way to phrase that.
Yeah, but I'm saying that's what led to, so to say, the Zionist settler colonial project. And people don't like the term, but that concept of people without a land for a land without a people. So the reverse settler colonial project in the West, if you would say, it's a people without an economy for an economy without a people. And that's these greater forces of globalism, and why the immigration keeps on coming, and why you may not be able to stop it. It just look like Palestinians, like, okay, they wanted to stop the Israeli colonial.
Well, basically, Doooovid, you're just engaging in using kind of triggery language. It's going to trigger all the kind of anti-Semites and JQ white Wignats out there, which is usually your audience.
Yeah, man, that's why I'm trying to phrase it in the type terms of the people that watch this stuff they might be familiar with. And I guess people watch this stuff because they like to be triggered.
Yeah, SJJ, what was that comment that just flashed up?
Oh yeah, so Nudge Unit asks, what is the point then, Colin? Should we conclude that it's better to give up, or should people focus on something else and accept it, etc.? What is the objective here?
Well, I think the first objective is to get off the JQ train, because it doesn't go anywhere and it doesn't really explain why anything's happening. So, yeah, first goal is get off the JQ train and stop using the Jews as a kind of a sorry excuse and a cope for all the shit that's happening in the world. And then once you do that, I think most of these steps are quite logical. People should then move on to the kind of more natural, logical conclusions that do they want to have a healthy society, and is demographic replacement part of that healthy society or not?
Cool.
I mean, keep things simple. If they're not simple, they're not true, really.
Yeah, well, look, I do tend to agree. I mean, I know that you think that Doooovid is like a bit of a costume Jew, comes on here to trigger the Wignats or something. I think, forgive me if I'm putting words in your mouth, but I get.
No. I
that-
completely would,
You'd agree
embrace
with that
that.
somewhat.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So, look, many people do. I actually seem to feel differently, and maybe I'm just alone, in that Doooovid is, with exposure to him, not the first time, I grant you, the first time you get like the David Yorkshire response, okay, where they say, aha, thank you for confirming all my suspicions, Jew. And they go away and they like put it on their channels and say, look, here's a Jew admitting it all. Ha ha ha. And rub their hands. Okay. But I think with exposure to some Doooovid, he actually has like a de-radicalizing effect in a way. But maybe I'm the only one who thinks that.
Yeah, most of my content's relatively boring. Relatively, like, I came because you asked me, and you give me a bigger audience. But like the first hour was basically Doooovid giving boring, just history, theology, which is probably my best speed. So I end up playing the character because it's more interesting, and so that's the nature of social media, brings out the worst in us, that give the audience what they want. I mean, maybe Colin's always in character as an intellectual, but Doooovid starts out as an intellectual and then gets dragged down by the crowd to give them what they want.
Yeah, we could have just gone straight to the crowd and given them what they want, to be honest. They were just shouting at us for the first hour.
Anyway, gents, I have to take leave of you now. So,
yeah,
nice
thanks
chatting.
for coming on, dude.
Right,
I
cheers.
Appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
Dude,
God bless.
we need to finish anyway. It's 3 hours,
You
20
wrap it up.
minutes.
You have, if you want to ramble for a minute on this point where Colin, I think he went to Japan, so it's ironic that the guy who kind of fled the battle is claiming that they could have won. So this question, like, could have, it's like, well, the Palestinians, could they really win? Is there something that they could do better that they would win? Or comparable to say, is there anything you could really do to stop the demographic change? And like what Colin was so convinced that there's something that they could have done to stop the demographic change.
Well, look, I think Colin's reasons for going to Japan are personal, so I'm not quite sure that he fled. Let's put it that way. Before we go, I just want to.
I didn't have to make it personal, but just in the sense that they actually, that why he's so convinced that it's stoppable. He didn't seem to be, give any clear, like, path to victory, other than like, if everybody would just listen to my advice or.
Well, look, what I say is it is true that we never know exactly where the forces of politics and society really will change. We're in an incredibly disruptive period of society right now as we enter into, like, we basically just invented AI in the last couple of years. We're in an incredibly disruptive period. We've only been on the internet for 25 years or something. The social upheavals of society are incredibly new in terms of the the lifespan of humanity on this planet and civilization, we're in this most disruptive period. We really don't know what things are going to be like in 10 or 20 years. And no matter what, if some kind of demographic reversal is possible, then we would always be starting with an advantage over how the opposite started, how all these people ended up here. Because at some point they only ended up here with one person, and they've grown to outnumber us from that one person. We'd never be starting reversal from one. So, I mean, as bad as it might seem, and as unlikely or improbable as it may ever seem, there is still a lot of us here, and demographic reversal is possible.
Yeah, I mean, it's like why I do this, and think that generally, education, talking to other people, saying like the Claire kind of point, like I don't think anyone necessarily has nefarious intentions. That like generally, people are rational actors and want their self-interest, and the main problem of conflict and strife is just a conflict of interest where people's best interests are not not the same, and two parties, especially people acting as groups, acting in their own self-interest, has negative effects, side effects, and therefore open, honest discourse is the best way to resolve it. And even my points on immigration and multiculturalism, and say, well, I mean, it's not going to do you any benefit to hate the Jews, and even just recognizing, okay, the Jews are just acting according to their strategy or our perceived best interest, and there might be a lot of things in our best interest that are not in your best interest, and the best way is to talk that out and to come to some sort of compromise. And then you could have friendships with people that have your different interests, learn, especially in the possibly new multicultural world where all these various groups that you interact with have different self-interests that are in conflict with each other, and it's usually easiest to navigate it when you're open and familiar with those, and they don't come as a surprise, and then you don't think people are acting intentionally nefariously. And then I guess related to the tunnels, yeah, I think it's just kind of like a cute meme, and it shows kind of the collapse of civilization, the homeless, all these various crises that whatever reason became a popular meme. But if it caused people to tune in and listen to it, like God bless, glad you tuned in. But yeah, I think there's basically non-conspiratorial, rational explanations for the tunnels. And like, yes, there are poor Jews. Yes, there are Jews coming to the West that are, have their big eyes and dreams of fortunes and good things coming their way, and are willing to start off sleeping in tunnels and basements of synagogues. But there's also huge factions in dispute among Jews, and this is also indicative of these huge disputes and problems facing the Jewish people and and the world at large. So appreciate doing this, Steve. Did we stream last week too? Or was that 2 weeks ago?
No, it was 2 weeks ago. So maybe in like 2 weeks again, if you're free, Doooovid, we'll aim to do a stream.
Okay, yeah, I guess God bless like Claire for your gossip or whatever. If Claire's became a
Yeah,
popular
I don't think Claire
streamer-
was super pleased. She left in a huff, didn't she, when Brundle came on?
Yeah, I guess like
So
she's moving in on your co-host, because Doovid's just like the bi-weekly, and then Claire could become your co-host, and so she's probably going to take you up on that if you offer, and you might have a hard time. Like Claire might be your best option, God forbid, but I'm glad to see your channel doing well. I'm not sure if you got over $100 on stream on AdSense yet.
no, I got wait, it's not a meme. It sounds like a meme. So maybe it's not a meme. I got 88 English pounds. I was able to withdraw. That was my first ever payment.
Well, you actually got immediate payment. So they used to make you wait like 3 months, but you're saying you already in the US you got to do like $100 at a time. But you're saying you already got.
I think the bar is 100. Oh wait,
If it's
I'm
100
not sure what
US,
it is, but
then the pound is worth a little bit more than the dollar.
yeah,
So
that could be why
over.
I got 88 pounds.
I'm pretty sure, like on my account, once it gets over 100, they automatically send it to my bank account. So if that's the case,
Yeah.
if $88 is over the US 100 minimum and you have it connected, they automatically wire it to your bank account. So if you got that
Yeah.
money, props for you. Proud of you.
I've already reinvested it, although I've already reinvested it. I'm not doing good. I'm not being a good Jew, Doovid. And I should be just like keeping it and saving it and putting it in a pot.
No, reinvesting in your
I've
business is
Yeah, I
like,
bought a microphone. This was £100. Now
you can consider buying
I bought
StreamYard.
StreamYard. I bought StreamYard as well. So we're not currently in the black yet, but
It's
we're
part
getting
of the
there.
in-group benefit. Like when I was, I love being a Jew. I was around Jews. We talked for hours and hours just about our plots and schemes, hopefully honest schemes for getting ahead. And a lot of them were just purely like making money and just sitting around like scheming how we're going to make money. But all sorts of things. And people like scheme how they're going to pick up women or something, but scheming about how you're going to make money is relatively, we talked about that. So I'm glad you're doing it. And hopefully you do it in a way that's not upsetting to your audience or your own moral standards, and you feel you're doing a good value proposition, you're providing people with what they want, and they're happy to, at least some of them, to. And but okay, so I'll let you close off for this anything else.
All right, thank you, Doovid. Appreciate it.
Okay, God bless. Till next time.
Bye-bye. Thank you, everybody who super chatted. Ricardo, Judas, and A Life Cry. Like I say, I'm reinvesting it. We've got the good microphone. We've got StreamYard and whatever. Give the stream a thumbs up if you don't mind. That's the currency that matters. It helps the stream in the algorithm. And this was highly requested for the outro. So thank you very much, everybody. See you next time. I appreciate you.
Somewhere in the dark and nasty regions where nobody goes stands an ancient castle. Deep within this dank and uninviting place lives Burke.
Hello.
Overworked servant of the thing upstairs.
Burke, feed me.
But that's nothing compared to the horrors that lurk beneath the trapdoor. For there is always something down there, in the dark, waiting to come out.